Well, hello there. I'm David, and I am building a full-size replica of the Millennium Falcon filming model from 1977's Star Wars. So let's take a look at things and see how it's coming along. If you've watched any of my previous videos, you'll notice that I've called them episodes. And this one is a build update. And build updates will come a little bit fewer and far between simply because I wait until I've got enough stuff to show you what's going on. And episodes tend to focus on more specific things like how I'm using laser scanning or reviewing the new C-Lab kit or that sort of thing. Build updates will not really concentrate on one specific thing, but where I am in the build as a whole. Will also be far less scripted than my episodes are, so you may have to put up with a few more unhinged rants. One of the things that I spent some time on was, where do I start? I mean, there's so much been going on since I started this project. I decided to start with my references, or in most cases, the lack of references. I have been using a collection of photographs of the modernized Millennium Falcon, the one that was modified for The Empire Strikes Back, and that has caused a number of issues. But the biggest challenge that I've run into was a bit of a self-inflicted wound in that I used publicly available drawings off of the replica prop forum. And as soon as I decided to start using those, I was kind of told those drawings are not correct. And I knew that going in, and I could see looking at dimensions on the drawing that some of those things were not correct. The cockpit tube was listed as 5.75-inch diameter, and I knew that it was 6. So I knew going in that some of those things were not quite correct. But as I've been building more and more, I've discovered that more and more of those dimensions are not correct. I can't fault anybody for those things being not correct. I have a very old revision of those drawings. I'm sure that there are updated drawings out there. I've just never found them publicly. But the three folks that worked on the drawings that I have did an amazing job. I mean, they were taking dimensions off of 50-year-old blurry, low resolution images, mostly scanned out of magazines. All things considered, a great job. I mean, they're only off by, a quarter of an inch here and there, but when you compound all those quarters of an inches together, you do end up with things that are not quite correct. And when you're striving for the accuracy level that I am striving for, those things become a problem. So I've been weaning myself off of those drawings and just relying on my own ways to determine dimensions of things. But again, a shout out to the three guys that made those drawings, because kind of without those drawings and without those three fellows, I don't think I would have had the confidence to start a project of this size. The other self-inflicted wound that I brought upon myself was that I decided to do this as the 1977 edition, the very first Millennium Falcon that anybody ever saw on screen. And it's easily identified because it has these mechanical bays that go around here somewhere. And after Star Wars and for pre-production for The Empire Strikes Back, mechanical bays that go here were removed and covered up with more landing gearboxes. Every photograph that was taken of the Millennium Falcon after 1978, I believe, has additional assemblies here, and these mechanical bays are no longer there. Bits and pieces of these were removed and put into mechanical bays out on the other side. If you're doing this as a 77 version, the number of photographs that I have access to is very, very limited. There's just not a lot of them. Arguably, the best source for reference photos for the 77 edition is the Chronicles book that we probably already know about. It's only published in Japan, extraordinarily expensive. And the biggest drawback with the images in the Chronicles books, besides the fact that the books are ridiculously expensive, is that there are so few pictures and images of the Falcon in that book. There's only about a dozen, and really we need a whole book that is just from those archived photographs, but I don't think we'll ever get one. So after all the changes for The Empire Strikes Back, there are just some mysteries that will never be solved. Whatever photographs were taken prior to 1978 are the only ones that exist and the only ones that will ever show us these areas for the modification. One of the big challenges with a build like this and not having correct dimensions is that you sometimes don't know the size and position of assembly A until component B is finished and installed, but you can't do component B until object C is finished and correctly sized. So there's a lot of chicken and egg. You kind of have to start with little greeblies off to the side, and then from there, get your dimensions for the other parts. And from these other parts, now I knew where this was placed because I had this in the right place and this was the right size. And so now I know where this sits in the hole. I think the largest thing that you'll notice with my build right now is that the bottom domes are in place. Obviously, you'll see some other things that we'll talk about in a moment, but the bottom domes are in place. And those domes came from Stuart Brown. I purchased a set of domes off of him. They come in quarters, so they get assemblable quarters. Now, my understanding is that the real filming model used blow molded acrylic domes. And I spent a lot of time trying to source a company that could do that sort of thing. In investigating it, the practicality of getting domes that were the correct dome shape and getting them into Canada from either the US, certainly now, or from the UK just was impractical. I knew that Stuart Brown had vacuum formed ABS domes, and I knew that they were the correct radius in terms of the dome shape. So it is a little bit of a cheat. They're ABS, they're not the acrylic. The nice thing about the fact that these are ABS and not acrylic is ABS is far easier to work with than acrylic. When you drill it or cut it, it's not going to crack, it's not going to shatter, and you can use off-the-shelf modeling glue to adhere styrene to. So it's, I think, a better option than the acrylic domes. Sure, it's not 100% screen accurate, but when it's covered in bits and it's painted, I'm hoping nobody will ever know that it's not an acrylic dome. Except if they watch this video, now they know. So as River Song would say, spoilers. So the first thing I think we'll talk about here is the mandibles. And the reality is that this should be a really short segment of the video because nothing has really changed from the last video that I did entirely on the mandibles. I haven't even gotten to them yet. Next, we have the jaw box. This is the bottom one, and it is, kind of think of this as a template or a prototype. It's made of basswood. I 3D modeled it in Blender and then created a pattern from which I created the wooden part. The jaw boxes on the drawings are not the correct size. I figured out that it was not the correct size because I laser scanned the parts that go inside the jaw box, and they were not fitting the jaw box as described on the drawing. So I made a new jaw box based on a photogrammetry 3D model of the Millennium Falcon filming model, as well as taking measurements off of photographs, that sort of thing. And so this is the size of the jaw box that I have. It's still just a placeholder, a template to make sure that it is the correct size. If this is the correct size, I'm just going to cover it in styrene and use it to make the top of as well. But I need to make sure that this is the correct size. The next section I'd like to talk about is the gun platform. And once again, the drawings that I used, the gun platforms were not the right size. And I created a whole set of gun platforms that turned out to be too small. And if you scale up the gun platforms from the Bandai Perfect Grade kit, those end up being too big. A bit of trial and error and a subtle hint from another builder, I was able to get the correct outside diameter of the gun platform. And I was able to get the height of the gun platform, which again is incorrect on the drawings, from this assembly down here. The top of the gun platform lines up with this little detail on the Preamble assembly. So I had to build this assembly first, then get the correct diameter, and I built a paper, kind of a cardboard gun platform to get the diameter correct. And then through 3D modeling, I 3D scanned this piece, laser scanned it. So took that into Blender. And from that, I was able to get the correct size, outside diameter, top diameter, and overall height of the gun platform correct. So this is correct to what ILM has on the real filming model. The window is scratch built from sheet styrene and T-strip. The various plating and whatnot is just sheet styrene. My goal when I display this is either going to be on this engine stand or a metal stand that comes up through the bottom. When I originally designed this gun platform, this one here, the whole assembly was designed to come off the hull and you could get access to the stand underneath. I designed it with be held on by just 4 magnets. And then I realized that this assembly is actually quite heavy to be hanging underneath with just held on by 4 magnets. So when I decided to redo both of the gun platforms, I decided to make a change in how they were built and attached to the hull. The other issue with taking the whole thing off is that obviously you can see that there are Preamble assemblies that attach to the hull and the edge of the gun platform. And taking this on and off all the time would have damaged these. So there was no point. So what did I do? Well, when I redesigned these gun platforms, I made it so just this top section comes off, leaving the rim. So this top section is now held in place with 6 magnets, and there's a magnetic strip along the inside edge of the rim. This, by the way, is the hole that the stand would go through, and this little hole all the wiring comes out of. So now, after revision and rethink, this is a much lighter component. It weighs a third of what the other one does, and it's held on by a much greater magnetic force. So I'm actually quite happy with how these turned out. This is a much better idea. The stand fits directly inside, and I'm not risking the loss of any greebies around the edge. So those are the new gun platforms. One final little note on the gun platforms, and I am not sure that you can see them, so we'll get you a close-up. But because the gun platforms on the filming model are held in place by standard driver screws, and they're visible on the filming model, I have added those screws as well. They don't do anything. They're cosmetic. They're just there because they're on the filming model. I still need to add them here. I need to confirm whether or not they were visible on the filming model when it was being filmed, or if those 4 screws were put in after the fact for The Empire Strikes Back. I don't know. So if you know when the 4 screws on the gun platform were put into the model, let me know in the comments. And if they were there for 1977, I can add them. If they were not there for 1977, I will omit them because I know that these were there because we have photographs of the gun platform without this component. But these four that go here, I don't know about. Next, you'll see that the walkways are in place, at least the bottom ones. And this was a bit of a milestone for my build, having these finally affixed. I actually built these probably over a year ago, and you can see that some of the white styrene is starting to yellow a little bit because of age, but it's nice to have these finally installed onto my build. You will also notice that there are a lot of little white greeblies all over it and some not white ones. The white ones, for example, these panels here and these bits, they are castings of either C-Lab or Centurion parts or whatever other part was required. Specifically, these little bits here from the Centurion, the Tamiya 125 Centurion, all over the Millennium Falcon and Y-Wing and others. This part was used extensively by ILM. And instead of buying a dozen $250 Centurion kits, I just cast these. So most of these greeblies that you'll see are castings on my build. But it's kind of nice to start seeing this take shape with the gun platform and now the outer walkways. So now we are down at probably the most significant part of the build to date is the addition of the rear landing gear box. Sometimes I call it the lower engineering deck, but it's probably more commonly known as the landing gear deck because these panels here cover up the holes for which landing gear would come out of. This, again, the drawings were very close. The biggest correction that I needed to make for the actual build versus the drawings is this little corner section over here on both sides. Obviously, the angles and the distances here were incorrect on the drawings. And you kind of need to start laying out the armor plating and putting that in place to get the correct angle of these in this area. It is another case of you need to do thing A before you can do thing B, but then thing C needs to be done before thing A can be finished. It's sort of the state of the build and you can't get away from it. But once I started laying out the armor plating and figuring out where the plates were going to go, I was able to add little extensions to these corners and correct that. The rest of it, of course, is as per the drawings, they're pretty close. The drawings have this section in the wrong position longitudinally. You do not really know where this entire component is going to go until you have a correctly sized gun platform. And then you also have to have this greebly section in place to know where this butts up against this butts up against this. And you also now down here need to know where this assembly down here is going to go and the lower lips and all of that stuff. It's all flows down. This needs to be the correct size. So we needed to make sure that the gun platform was absolutely correct because everything else radiates off of the gun platform. And this is the wrong size. Everything else is going to be wrong. I'm very confident this is the correct size. Everything here is either scratch built out of styrene. Certainly the panels that go over the landing gear holes are scratch built styrene. The various, this is Centurion parts, this is M60 part, racing car, that sort of thing. The only casting you'll see are these two little greeblies here. I forget what kit they came out of, but the kit comes with a pair. But the problem is this pair of little greeblies is also used all over the Falcon. And instead of trying to source whatever kit that was, I forget. I just made castings of it. So there's lots of, these are the only castings on these bits. There were also changes made to this for The Empire Strikes Back, and they're on all of my reference photos except for the ones in Chronicles. So there's a little bit of back and forth between where does this little greebly get added before or after The Empire Strikes Back. There's one, for example, that goes right here in the middle. You'll see this on museum photographs. It is not there for the 1977 build. So you have to be sort of careful about adding things that are not there. But very happy that this is now in place. While we're here, let's talk about the Falcon's big rear hole. This hole in the hull, the location of which was found simply by measuring the photographs, the location of the tear, the whole skin tear, and figuring out where the underlying hole should be. It's probably not exactly correct to what ILM had in terms of the shape, but the torn skin covers it up anyway. I found the location for this based off of measuring the Van Dyke kit and measuring photographs and looking at the photogrammetry 3D model of the Falcon, which has actually become very useful for other areas. But I've penciled in on the armor plating up here where the little damage marks will go, and they'll get dremeled out. The skin tear I'm working on right now. I'm leaning towards vacuum forming, making a mold, either 3D printing mold or making the mold out of MDL fiberboard, which is probably how ILM did it, and vacuum forming the tear into that mold, and then cutting out and then laying the skin on top. When I originally looked at it, I thought they just cut out the little triangles in the tear and then heat gunned it to flow in. But looking at it more, I think they vacuum formed that tear. Inside this hole is a casting of one of the mechanical bays. It's the same casting that's used in the top and the bottom of the jaw box, and one of the big mechanical bays in the top rear quarter. This is a placeholder right now. If you look at it, it's at the wrong angle. It's just because it's sitting here and I have to put it at the right angle. Bandai did the same thing, and I do have one photograph showing that, yes, it is indeed a casting inside this hole. So it's what ILM did. I'm going to match the same thing. So this is where I am so far with my build. I've not covered everything because this video started to get really long, but I've covered the major bits I want to talk about. This so far has been almost exactly 2 years to get to this point. My very first post on RPF was October 2023, when I started the process of actually building this thing. So it's been 2 years to this point. I had actually started collecting the kits for about a year or so prior to that, some of the lesser expensive ones. So this has been, at least so far, a 3-year project. But this, the Tamiya Lancaster, was apparently my very first Millennium Falcon replica kit that I needed. I was given this for my birthday probably 30 years ago. So maybe I had been building the Millennium Falcon since then, and I just don't know it. But here we are. Before I sign off, I'd like to also mention that this channel has had its very first video to hit 1,000 views. It only took 201 days to reach that point. I don't know if that's exciting or not. It's exciting that there's 1,000 views, but 201 days seems like a long time to hit that point. But here we are. still pretty cool nonetheless. I'm glad people are on board and enjoying this. Hopefully this video does well. It's interesting to me that some of the videos that I did that I thought would really, really do well, um, didn't hit the numbers that I thought. I kind of really thought that the laser scanning video that I did would get a lot of views because even though I'm focused on the Millennium Falcon, laser scanning from scale modeling in general seems like something that would have been popular. But I don't know, maybe the algorithm just decided that it wasn't something people wanted to see. But nevertheless, my review of the Bandai Perfect Grade kit was the first one to hit 1,000 views, and I guess that's cool. Everybody wants the Bandai kit. Probably they're more interested in that in laser scanning parts. But anyway, here we are. So, if there is something that you want me to cover in my future videos, please mention it in the comments. I try to respond to everybody's comments. I don't get a lot of them, so it's rather easy. But if you're interested in seeing me talk about something or go over a process, please let me know in the comments. But until then, thanks again for watching, and I hope you enjoyed it.